Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from Red State dated October 4th. And I saw this headline and I was like, why is this headline appearing on a very much a right-leaning website? And then I kind of skimmed through the article. I was like, oh, okay. But so I figured this might be something we're talking about. And it's about, is everyone's favorite conflict in the Middle East. It's Israel and Palestine again. But it says, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. It's in scare quotes, so just keep that in mind. And that is also the first line of the actual article. So, there it is. There's the bumper sticker. It doesn't start with hey, hey, ho, ho, but it's still easy to remember. Easy to shout, but not very easy to defend. So naturally, it's perfect for young students to glom onto because they don't flesh this one out at all. And they don't do that because they don't want to, and they don't want to because they prefer to align themselves with a virtuous cause. They're also influenced by radical students from the Middle East who seem to have arrived here with a plan. So we get lots of campus protests, lots of anti-Semitism, lots of gobbledygook. Someone should take a closer look at the logic behind these chants. And says, I know, let's do a list. This is kind of why I want to do it, to see what this stuff actually means. And I think I've done something similar to this, but not quite in this level of detail. But I think you'll get the point. Just so any lefty out there that happens to listen to this, this is what you're cheering for. So number 1 says, from the river, ... I've seen the video blurbs where college students are asked what river and what sea, and I've seen those too, and they fail gloriously as it says, yes, they have no idea, because they have no idea. Is Taylor Swift a big thing? Geography, not a big thing. Anyway, I'm not saying they're all ignorant of the Mediterranean, the Jordan River, and their relative proximity to Palestine, or quote-unquote Palestine, but the implication is that the area between those two waterways, also known as the State of Israel, is in the way and has to go. But that patch of land is already free and has a lot of opportunities for Palestinians who want to peacefully work there. And we see how that worked out on October 7th. It says that Arabs can also hold seats in the Knesset, which is Israel's parliament for people that don't know. It says, but for the ones who support Hamas, which was voted in legitimately as the official government in 2006 and hasn't held elections since, so it's an authoritarian dictatorship, I guess if you will, and fascist, a word that lefties like to use but don't seem to know what it means, but these folks are actually that. It says they've signed on to a mandate demanding Israelis die or move out so they can take over the land. Number 2 says, blank, blank, you can't hide. We accuse you of genocide. Oh, shut up. No, it isn't. Genocide is when you try to wipe out an entire race of people in a given area, like funny mustache German guys genocide, or the Turkish genocide against the Armenians, or the Turks against the Cypriots. So in Turkey, you might want to do something about that. So saying that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians by accepting an invitation to war where your combatants hide among your civilians is like saying America committed genocide against the Japanese for bombing Hiroshima. Truman bombed Japan so we wouldn't have 1 million casualties through invasion. Yes, what was it? Operation Downfall? Was it? God, why am I forgetting that? I think that's what it was. But yeah, go look that up. It would have been horrifically bad. Says he did not bomb Japan with the intent of killing every Japanese there was. Correct. As for the Gazan civilians and their plight, it's sad to see them suffer death and destruction in a war started by their political leaders. But if you play in the middle of the interstate, that is such to say continue to support Hamas, you just might get squished by a Kenworth. Nice. What is this picture here? Atomic Age. I was like, what is this? It's an advertisement. For a minute, I was like, wait a minute, what? Anyway, got autistically distracted. So number 3, our land is occupied land. No, it isn't, and hasn't been for almost 20 years when Israel pulled out and left you to yourselves. Everything that Palestine became, it became all by itself. And what did it become? Well, it became a bastion of hatred. It became impoverished. It became dependent upon its neighbor, that's Israel, for fresh water because its political leadership decided to invest brainpower in bombs and hang gliders instead of desalination plants. It invested all the financial aid it got from the rest of the world in tunnels and Jew-hating kiddie shows. Yeah, you should go watch these. It's like kids are being taught this. That's horrific. Says Beirut was once known as the Paris of the Middle East with its coastline and hotels. Been degraded a bit since the 1970s by hosting terrorists. Yeah, just a little bit. But it shares the same coast with Palestine. If Hamas had wanted to do right by its people, it could have been putting its resources into the same things. But it could also have put resources in agriculture. If Jews can grow oranges as big as basketballs, so can you. And it says number 4, the land is ours. Well, you can go back 110 years to the Balfour Declaration by the British, or you can go back a couple of thousand years to the Bible by God. There's little doubt that the Jewish people have a more valid and historical claim to the land than the Muslims, who post-date the Jews by a couple thousand years. It says if you're talking about how the Jews bought up all the land and then moved the Arabs off in the last century, it's not that cut and dried. A dozen years before Israel became a state, the Peel Commission of 1937 found that Jews were mainly purchasing uninhabited tracts of sandy, swampy, and arid land rather than what the Arabs were claiming, as the Jews are buying up all the good land. Says the commission found that the increased migration of more Arabs into the good land was causing less good land to be available. Funny how that works. Says, and the Jews were able to do more with their poor land than the Arabs were with their good land. See above. Oranges, big as basketballs. Says, regardless, whichever way you go, whether you believe Israel has a more valid claim than the Muslims, they do, or not, it's all pretty irrelevant now. We're not giving the land back to the Native Americans, and the Israelis aren't giving the land back to the Arabs. Right, so it's like, what are you fighting over then? 5, victory to the Palestinian resistance. It says, okay, what does that look like? Do you think any of these campus brain trusts could articulate what that means? The answer to that is no, of course. So could they drill down on a granular level and say, this is what our idea of justice is, without saying, but we have to kill all the Jews first? Probably not, because all of that won't fit on a protest placard or bumper sticker. Hamas proper says the Jews have to go. They have to be killed or evicted for their brand of justice to be realized. But I don't think the college students here are going to say that quite so loudly. No, they're not. Says American students on campuses are more swayed by romantic ideals like free Palestine instead of kill Jews, which are essentially synonymous terms. So I think even they would be forced to admit that it sounds so Hitler-ish. And it does. There's number 6, Palestinians this and Palestinians that. As you may have noticed that I've been putting the word Palestinians in quotation marks, and that's because I think the word is somewhat specious. It comes from the word Philistine, and the area was ruled by everyone from the Hebrews, the Macedonians, the Romans, and to the Ottomans, and then more recently the Jews again, and now the Arabs, if we're talking about Gaza. This Arafat declared a Palestine a state in 1988, and most countries in the UN recognize it, because they're idiots. So the US still does not recognize it as a legitimate state because of its history with terrorism, which is how it should be. This may be a minor point, but I try to be precise since the radicals use the word on all of their signage. So it's a summary. So every reason that campus radicals proclaim in their tantrums is basically irrelevant now. The state of Israel has been there for decades, it is economically strong, and its military is the best in the business. It's not going anywhere. Really, they're not moving out of the neighborhood, and when campus children scream and shout, it isn't going to change much. Republicans generally have no problem backing Israel. Democrats now find themselves in the unenviable position of being chewed on by the alligators they created. Radicals may get Kamala Harris to reduce arms sales to Israel somewhat, but the IDF can just buy them elsewhere. There is no shortage of weapons on the international market for people with money. So if you have the unstoppable force, that's Hamas, pitted against the immovable object, that's Israel, what is the solution? Well, the same solution that has come down for every decisive war in history. There's a winner and a loser. 2 world wars, Korea, sort of, our civil war, etc., etc., etc. Somebody has to get beaten soundly, admit they've gotten beaten down soundly, and agree to peace. This is the only way that this will ever end well. Hamas, and Hezbollah for that matter, has to quit making war on Israel and possibly even learn to get along with it, which neither of those things will ever happen, but I know what he's saying. Or just leave it, or just ignore it and leave it be. But unless this happens, I don't think conflict over there will ever end. And I've been watching this go on since 1972, so I'm not sure it ever will. This hatred has a half-life just like plutonium. Yeah, I hadn't read this entire article, but wow, okay, this is actually pretty profound, and I hope more people on the left do read this specific article. It is linked in the description below, and hopefully you see this video and read the article instead of listening to me blather on about it and putting in my little bits of sarcasm and commentary. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it than what I've read. So let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon.